We will call this meeting to order. And before we get to the agenda, I would like to address, I heard earlier in the week some feedback from somebody saying that Tom's article in last week's paper kind of ruffled some feathers. Now, I don't know whose feathers were ruffled, and I haven't talked to anybody that knows anything except that feathers were ruffled. So I thought it would be important for us to go on the record about this. I read your story, Tom, and I thought it was an accurate reflection of our meeting last week. So have you had a chance to read it?
Yeah, I read it. I thought it was good.
Okay. And I know Jim read it. Did you get any feedback on it, Tom? No. Okay. Well, well, I thought it would be important for us to address it, and there may be further discussion about it. But as I say, I thought your story reflected our discussion from last Thursday accurately. I wanted to also mention it's possible that it was the headline, which I know you're not responsible for, right, that maybe irked somebody because of the word archaic.
I mean, I'll say it again. Our election laws are archaic in many respects.
Well, and the definition of archaic from the dictionary is marked by the characteristics of an earlier period. Yeah. In that sense, all election law is somewhat archaic because it marks an earlier period. And oftentimes, our election laws have to catch up with technology. And that can be difficult to do since our legislature only meets every other year officially. I wanted to also point out that we often discuss the way election law we would like to see it work better for voters and for us as a staff to make it an easier process. But I want to emphasize that we will always conduct our elections according to the legislative updates, whatever, according to the law, according to the updates, according to what the State Board of Election Commissions has provided as the way that we should do it. And we're not going to veer to the right or the left on that because we know what the election law says and we're following that. So be assured that that is not, we're not going to do anything independently without it going through the proper channels. Now, I do have one bone to pick, Tom, and that is putting cleanup in quote marks. When we think of cleanup, and this is probably not a big deal, but when we think of cleanup, we're talking about where the legislature has done one thing in the election law in one place and not brought another part of the law up to match it. That mostly seems to happen with school board elections. And so those kind of things, we've talked about cleanup for probably for my entire service to the Election Commission. If anybody is upset or has their feathers ruffled on this stuff, you are always welcome to watch our live stream on YouTube. And if you want to go back, those are all, is that called a channel? Mm-hmm. We have a YouTube channel, and you can watch every back meeting that not everyone. How long have we been doing that? 2 years?
Since 2020.
Since 2020, okay, okay. So, go ahead and watch it, and we appreciate feedback. We'd like to have it come to us and not through a third party. But at any rate, that's my comments. Y'all have any further word on that?
Yeah, I do. Of course, we welcome anybody to come to our meeting.
That's right,
anytime
yes.
And participate
Yes.
in the meeting, observe the meeting. If people see one snapshot in a newspaper article, that doesn't tell the whole story.
True,
We're in here,
yeah.
you know, very often discussing these issues. So yeah, you pointed to technology catching up with the law. Look, that's a constant theme in our society.
Exactly.
Right? Not just an election law, constantly.
True,
The
yeah.
law needs to catch up to societal changes.
Right.
Technology changes.
Right.
And yeah, in terms of course, we follow the law. There are election laws,
Right.
but our discussion is regarding changes to the laws. We're the ones on the front lines of elections, right? We're the ones who are seeing issues
Yes.
arise and where changes in election laws need to be made and proposed more than anybody else in the entire
True.
state. We're the
Yeah.
ones looking at that issue. I'd say this commission, as opposed to other county commissions around the state, is way more proactive and engaged in some of those issues than most commissions. So I think it's an important role we play
Yeah.
doing that and looking at issues.
But we
and
don't do it
raising them
independently.
to the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah.
That's what the
Yeah.
discussion was. Or raising
Right.
them to our representatives.
Right.
Who are the ones who sponsor the bills. We're not the ones writing the laws. We're
Yeah.
the ones changing the laws. But we play an important role,
Yeah.
I think. And
Yeah.
we have, District Commission has traditionally played an important role in looking at the law and suggesting
Right.
changes and proposed changes. And that was the example I pointed out last time with the high schoolers. That we had
Yes.
over 100 high schoolers trained as poll workers this time to participate in elections.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bill that we got passed
Right.
as a commission through our representatives. And I think that's a huge thing for the commission for Washington County and the state. That's just one example. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's all I got.
Okay. Jim?
To your point, we are the ones who, we being the election commission and all the folks that work with and for Jennifer and all of the people that work the polls, the poll workers, et cetera, we know more about how these elections are run and what problems are created, perhaps. And I can tell you, after the last election 2 years ago, when the legislature went into session, they went hard in the area of trying to modify and change election law. Some of the things that they wanted to do created process issues
Yeah.
at the polls. And those process issues are difficult, create difficulties for the voters, create difficulties for the poll workers, create difficulties for this committee. And so we said, okay, and we went down to Little Rock to talk to some of them, and we sort of got turned away, got snubbed, because we were too late. By the time they had gotten that
Exactly.
far along, they're ready to vote and close the door and go home.
Yeah.
So what we said this time is, well, let's be a little more proactive, and let's maybe start looking at these things and so that we can report it to them earlier.
Right.
But they will make the final decision. They will be
Absolutely.
the ones who make the law according to everything that they know, and obviously they're going to know things that we don't know.
Yeah.
But we're going to follow that law
That's right.
as we always do.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. With that, we will move on to the minutes from the previous meeting. And we sort of preempted you, Max. On the last paragraph, we found some changes that, or some rephrasing of the language that needs to be done there in the last couple of sentences. So these are, the rest of it seemed fine to me, Jim.
Yeah, I have no problem with this stuff.
Yeah, they look fine.
Okay, well, on the last sentences, let's go ahead and rephrase the sentence that starts "to expedite." Move that phrase to the end of the sentence and begin with, Jennifer announced she will print copies of the sample ballot to hand to voters when entering the poll location, and then add that phrase, to allow voters more time to acquaint themselves with the amendments. Is that, you get that?
So Jennifer announced she will print copies of the sample ballot to hand to voters when entering the polling locations to allow
More time
for voters.
to familiarize themselves with the ballot.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last sentence, wait a minute. Further discussion. No. Chairman Renee Oschlager requested that Jennifer Price, well, we don't need to say forward. Maybe we ought to say, let's just drop part of that, because you're not going to forward anything to the state legislators.
At this point, we were just talking about
We were
things-
discussing it.
compiling a list. So
Yes.
Chairman Renee Oschlager requested that Jennifer Price continue to compile and revise the list of potential
Yeah.
election-related bills to be considered for introduction by the Secretary of State's office during the next
We
General
talked about
Assembly.
where would be the best place to present a list like this.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Jim.
Right.
First to the Secretary of State's office.
And to
consider, and then if
legislators.
not, yeah, exactly.
Because we've always approached legislators with, would you
Yeah,
mind
kind of
forwarding
individual.
this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
individually.
Yeah, and we've done this every
Uh-huh.
election cycle
Yes.
for many years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna ask Jennifer.
No, Jennifer will not do that. And it will be done on a
Perhaps if we do it with the
individual basis.
Secretary of State's office. we
Yeah,
might
yeah,
let
But,
that come from-
but as I understand it, the Secretary of State's office is not, are they forwarding legislation?
So the SBEC
Is
is
not.
actively
Oh, they are.
looking to get together a list of things like we talked about, that cleanup
Right,
type of
right.
legislation. They won't ever look to make
Initiate new stuff.
new things
Yeah.
or things that are more of a political nature. They are looking at practical
Okay.
things, and so like cleanup
Yeah.
type of things
Yeah.
is some of the things that they're looking at. Like, for instance, like runoff elections. Like, is 4 weeks better than
Right.
5 weeks
Yeah.
because of the logistics of prepping the election. Newspaper notifications, with so many
Right.
newspapers no longer being available, in the state, publishing in the newspaper, kind of how do we approach that, especially for some counties where the newspapers only publish once a week,
Yeah.
maybe twice every 2, that type of thing. So they look at more of that type
Practical
of
stuff.
right, those types of things, kind of like what, Jim, you referenced to the things that we're doing at the polls,
Right.
or problems that are created. When it gets into the more things like voter ID and that type of thing, they won't approach those
Right,
bills.
right.
Those will come
Okay.
from legislators.
Yeah.
So you're, let me make sure I'm understanding, SBEC has asked for us to do this?
The SBC is starting to put together a list of like things we see at the polls or during the elections to bring to their attention, that they could then help sponsor or look for sponsors and go ahead and start pre-working those bills. They are very careful, though, when they do this, that is not ever seen as a political
Right,
nature,
yeah.
because they have to have their board's approval and then, approval so that they remain, a nonpartisan
Right.
type of board, not promoting, certain legislation. But so for instance, like there's a part in the bill that we cleaned up that city clerks didn't have to be on the ballot. Well, they left it in one tiny little portion
There's a
in
cleanup.
another part of the bill, and so city clerks still had to be on the ballot this year. Those type of things is what they're looking at. The 4 weeks, 5 weeks runoff elections, and that type of thing is definitely what they're looking for. And so they asked the commissions, like, what are we seeing when we're prepping an election? What are we seeing at the polls? And then they'll take that list.
They
and
ask commissions all around the state for that information.
They will. They always start with the commissions that are more actively engaged, or have a like a more full-time coordinator,
Right.
because
Yeah.
then they're bigger counties for one, and they have more time to kind of go back and contemplate, what is going on.
Plus, just the size of these counties makes whatever issues are being encountered more obvious.
Yeah.
When you're in the larger counties.
Will I be correct
So-
that the problem with this statement is more about that, that you, Renee, have authorized Jennifer to do something that you actually didn't do?
Yeah, we're not ready to submit a list yet. So, that's the problem with it. We're not prepared to give the SBEC a list at this point. But what I would like for you to do, and maybe this should be in other business, but I would like for you to maybe put the top 3 or top 5 as things that are critical, and maybe we don't have anything that's terribly critical, but we have things that would make the process better. And if you could put that list together, that would be, I think we'd be closer to submitting it at that point.
Do you want to just strike this last
Yeah,
sentence?
let's
and
just
remove
strike it.
completely?
Yeah.
Okay.
To your last point,
Uh-huh.
maybe what this needs to have, maybe these need to be in a format that identifies the problem,
Oh,
whatever
Yeah.
the problem is, and we don't necessarily make a specific recommendation, although we could put in, say, well, here's some things that we thought about,
yeah. Okay.
and let the problem drive what they do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it's good to put the problem in there, but I think we should put a solution too if we have one.
Yeah, if we've got,
Because it's great that SBC is compiling this list, and they're
Good
Janata
point.
counties. But definitely we and Jennifer know more about
Steer
the nuts and bolts and
them.
the details
Yeah.
of how the process plays out. I would
Right.
suggest than anybody else involved.
right.
I didn't say not to, I just said let's make a clear separation between, let the
Yeah.
issue stand on its own, the problem stand on its own, and then we can add below that suggested.
That sounds good. I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, well, we have not approved the minutes, and we do want those changes, if you would make those and present them for next time.
I'm good with that.
And we'll move on to the reimbursement for the 2022 primary. Sorry, all that detail was in there.
So, this first one is for the primary. We're seeking $178,694.12 for reimbursement for the primary election. This cost includes poll worker pay, offsite early vote, training, mileage expenses, commission, supply costs, programming, ballot printing costs, and then all of our legal ads. And so when I add all of that together, that is the total submission that we will request. They will then go back through this and they may have questions about certain receipts that I send in, or, but pretty much when we've submitted this, we usually get close to this dollar amount.
Okay, let's break this down a little bit. This is submitted to,
This is submitted to the State Board of Election Commission.
Okay.
So the state pays for the primary and the primary runoff.
okay,
And so they will reimburse us for specific costs for those two elections. Now, this is not the complete cost of what the primary election
right,
actually was, because, for instance, we pay our poll workers $11.30 an hour. They only reimburse us for $11 an hour.
yeah,
We pay our supervisors $12.30 an hour. $11 an hour is all I get reimbursed for that. They don't pay us for the full day of what a poll worker works. So, for instance, they'll only pay us up to 14 hours for election day, but we sometimes have poll workers who are there for 16 hours on election day, and they will only reimburse us for $25 for one supervisor, like on the day before. But we know that it takes 4 or 5 poll workers to actually set up a polling location. So there's certain costs in here that we don't get reimbursed for, and that the county actually has to absorb for that. And if I were to put everything together, the dollar amount would actually be greater than this, but this is all I'm legally allowed
How
to
much greater?
reimburse. Well, if you looked at, it could be,
Let's give me a, round number.
I would say maybe $5,000 to $6,000 more, maybe even more than that. I've always fought with them about other counties are allowed to seek reimbursement for ES&S billing
right,
because we program our own. We're not allowed to seek reimbursement for that, but I think that we should. Like, I don't know why we can't create a bill to say this is what it costs,
right.
equivalent to what ES&S is charging.
Just because we're paying a human rather than a third-party company.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So if you account into that, it would be even greater than that, because ES&S charges for every single
that's
little
right.
thing they do. One candidate name, there's a set for that. A fee to burn one piece of media. So there's all those types of costs in there that we don't necessarily get to seek reimbursement for. There's a fee to set up the absentee ballots, that because we know how to do it, we, do it here in-house. And I'm not saying that we want ES&S doing these things, because we
No.
don't. We want
Good
to do
point.
them
Yes.
ourselves. But I do think that there should be a way for us to be able to seek reimbursement for that.
Does it need to be on this list?
It does. Now, it's not it's not a legislative change.
Yeah.
It's not a legislative change. It would actually be a procedural change. And so,
Procedural change
in the rules.
Yeah.
it can
With
be
the-
legislative, though.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Trump the rules.
Who created the rules that don't allow us to get paid more? Was it the legislature, or was it SBEC?
The SBEC, they said, so like they reimburse for poll workers at the minimum wage at $11.
Right.
So that part of it, don't think I'm that
Ready to
concerned.
fight on that? Yeah.
But the program.
Yeah, the programming, it seems kind of inequitable.
Hey, I agree with Jim. Put it on the list. And if they won't address it, we can ask somebody, one of our legislators, to represent. Because Washington counties, the county's being forced to bear the cost, where
True.
other counties are
True.
not.
Yeah.
For the same thing. So, put it on the list, I think.
Well, and it's Washington, Benton, Pulaski, Sebastian, Crawford,
All the big counties.
all the big
All the big
counties.
counties. Because the big counties don't use ES&S to do a lot of that stuff.
Right.
We are able to program our own and so on.
Yeah.
We probably ought to do a kind of maybe before we put that on there, we probably ought to do an
Comparison.
evaluation
Yeah.
of the difference. What would it be if we did it this way versus what it is this way? Just see where it comes out. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think we should put it on there no matter what, but I think that's good.
Right.
I think
I
that's
think we
good.
need to
So
know what we're talking about.
we do. We've been talking about this for years.
Well,
and it's just a question of reimbursement from
Yeah.
from the state. But I agree, that's good evidence.
And
It's
part of
important
that-
hey, we're saving the state, or the election
Right.
process this much money. I think that's a
The,
great point.
the Secretary of State is the one that decided to do ES&S, okay? We were always, or in the distant past, maybe not, but for however long have we been program your own?
When we first started, when the new voting equipment was introduced back in 2007, we were one of the first counties, us and Pulaski,
Right.
and I think maybe Boone County to be a
Oh,
PYO
yeah.
county.
Okay.
And
So-
so we've always been a program your own county.
So essentially, the Secretary of State's office has expected us to absorb that cost where the other counties don't have to. They get reimbursed for it. So it is, I mean, sounds like it's a county issue that, and especially with more counties doing it now, the SBEC is getting, or Secretary of State is getting a good deal from us that we need to ask for some equity on.
I agree, and with the issues, it sounded like with timeliness with ES&S.
Exactly.
the last
Yes.
election, it seems like the state as a policy should encourage counties to be PYO.
True.
Versus ES&S to control their own destiny. With the timing of elections, make sure the election process goes smoothly, right?
Right.
And I mean, you encourage that through policy, through reimbursement.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, because some of these counties, that would be a hardship for them to have to absorb that cost in order to be a PYO county.
Definitely.
Yeah, they're probably not gonna make that decision if they're
Yeah.
strapped for funds
Yeah.
already.
Exactly.
Well, and you also have to be able to have a dedicated person to do that too. In
Yeah.
smaller counties, it just is not practical to be a PYO county because you have a clerk who typically is in charge of the
Oh, right,
election, like
yeah.
just the setups and different things like that. And so, maybe you don't have someone that could learn it or different things like that. But definitely your larger counties is good, but you do have to have someone that has a good skill set because it can go really wrong.
And we don't need that.
Sometimes when you are in charge of your own destiny.
Right.
And so you have to be really careful about that too, as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, that is kind of another discussion, but I think what we're doing right now is approving the reimbursement for, well, let's do them individually. For the primary election, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the reimbursement for the 2022 primary election as presented.
All in favor? Aye. Any discussion? We're done with that.
We'll need signatures.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you've got the main one.
Yeah, and you can just sign yours, Renee, and
Oh,
then I'll
okay.
just put it in
Okay.
with this one.
All right. And then I will entertain a motion for the runoff.
I make a motion that we approve the reimbursement for the 2022 primary election runoff as presented.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any discussion? We have passed that and signed it. There you go. Okay, budget request. Did you go last night?
I did.
Or night before, I guess it was.
Yes, and so this came out of committee with a
Do
do
pass.
pass recommendation and will be on the October 20th, 22 quorum court agenda.
This is for our extra expenses on the 2022 budget, excuse me. Any discussion on that? Election updates.
We will start setting up early vote Thursday and Friday next week.
Wow.
Then early vote starts on October the 24th, and we'll have the 2 weeks. We've met with all of our supervisors, and we've done training. We've got a whole set of new poll workers who are ready to work, but we are, I hate to say it out loud, we have extra poll workers.
No.
And so,
Yeah,
you know, when it
it'll
comes
work
down
out.
to the day,
Yeah.
we won't. But we do. So right now we're definitely in good shape in regards to that. The poll or the express vote timing out seems to kind of keep staying in the news. I know that I did an interview yesterday about it, and there's been several things about it. So if you are hearing from individuals or from, you know, the public, it's only if you do nothing in front of the express vote. So if you put your ballot in there and you stand for 5 minutes and don't touch anything on the screen, will it time out and it alerts you that you time out. If you are actively touching the screen, advancing the screen, even if you're reading like issue 4, which is the largest of the issues, if you just merely tap the screen, you don't have to vote, you just have to have some sort of connectivity to the screen with your stylus, it remains active. So I don't want voters to be concerned that this is an issue. You know, the ballot, you know, if it does time out on you, we've talked to our poll workers. They just, you know, complete the process. The ballot comes back out, is blank.
Right.
Then they have to start over. But as long as voters kind of know that, and our poll workers, we've been talking to them when they came through training, we're sending out memos to everyone, to just touch the screen. That's it. It's simple.
This is a non-issue.
It keeps. I don't know. I know.
Have you seen like local news stories? Is it the local TV stations?
It's across the state, because yesterday I noticed that in one of the local news stories, like they had actually reached out to the Secretary of State's office, and Chris Powell had done part of the interview as well. So it's not it's across the state kind of news story, but it's not something for voters to be concerned about in the sense that they are going to be able to cast their ballot, you know, and so if you just touch the screen, that's it.
Yeah.
Super
These are
simple.
the same machines and the same voting process that voters have encountered at the polls for years now.
Yeah.
Nothing's different.
Right.
It's a,
Well, except for the link of that issue 4, which is what I think is what's got everybody concerned. They put that together with the timeout thing and said, okay, we got a problem here.
I can't imagine anyone standing at the screen for 5 minutes without touching it.
Right.
5 minutes is a long time when you're standing looking at one thing. In the abstract, it might not sound like a long time, but it's a long time.
Yeah,
when
it
you're
is.
standing
It
there
is.
voting.
Yeah.
So
No,
And there's a timeout. There's this prompt that pops up on the screen.
it does. Yeah. And it does, and it alerts the voter, alerts our poll workers, because they'll hear the beeping, and they'll know. And if you think about it in the sense of, I think the timeout is really to kind of alert our poll workers, like if someone were to walk away from a ballot and then you would be like, well, why there's something in the ballot or in the voting machine.
Right.
And so it returns then a blank ballot, because if the voters left, you don't know what the intent of the voter was. You don't know how they meant to vote that ballot.
Right.
And so it returns a blank ballot. So it's part of that, but just tap the screen. That's it. That's all you have to do. So.
All right. Well, is that the main
That's
concern
the thing
at this
I've
point?
been hearing about, you know, like for the 2020 election, we had the 2 pages of the presidential candidates, and that was published.
Right.
This time, it seems like this is the thing that is kind of popping up.
Sucking the air
that
out
I've
of the
been
room.
hearing about. So yeah.
Okay. All right, well, everybody you talk to, tell them just tap the screen. Okay, other business. Do we have any other business? Gentlemen, no other business? Okay, upcoming meeting dates. Do we need to attend the quorum court meeting next Thursday? When our reimbursement requests are,
I don't think so. I'll look and see. I'll let you know. Sometimes it may be put on that consent agenda, which
okay.
means,
Yeah.
and I'll
Just
look,
gets passed.
I'll look to see if it's on that consent.
Okay, do that.
Do pass recommendation.
Yeah.
Right, well, that's actually not for the reimbursement,
okay.
that's for the budget.
Reimbursement,
Um,
yeah, you're right.
Well, actually, that's on the
Yeah.
quorum court. I'm
Mhm.
confused, I'm old and confused. But I mean, you know, we can do that if we need to, but let us know.
Okay.
What's the amount we're asking for reimbursement?
Is it-
18,000, something like that, so.
Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah. I mean, it's, explainable cost. I feel
It-
like Jennifer can do a better job than me.
It is, yeah, and I watched the video and they didn't discuss it at all, am I right?
No.
It was just, hey, this is what it is, and it should be passed. Because most of those expenses have already been expended, haven't they? Okay, do we have any other meetings that we need
We don't, unless something comes up. Early
between now
vote
and
starts-
election day?
Early
Okay.
vote starts October the 24th. Election day, November the 8th. Currently, we have close to 750 absentee ballots that have been requested. 199 of those have come back. So if we kind of stay at this
Okay.
rate, I don't foresee us going over 2,000 absentee ballots.
Yeah.
But I'll definitely keep track of that and start to
Okay.
update the commission.
Okay,
And when I send out my early vote numbers, like I do
Mhm.
once early vote starts,
yeah,
I'll start to kind of include that number
Okay,
as
good.
well for the absentees, just to keep you up to date on
Okay.
on that number.
yeah, that'd
as
be
well.
good. Okay, then,
So no other meetings.
not unless something comes up, and hopefully it will not.
This may be a first since I've been on.
Yeah, I
this.
know, right? It seems like.
I know,
we're gonna
it's
keep
sort of,
meetings, but-
dee. All right, well, with that, we are adjourned. Sure. We are not adjourned.
My name is Beth Carter. I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. The quorum court always makes me go through that. I mean, I come to the committees, and I just want to say y'all have been kind, and I appreciate that. You furnished me copies, but something that was said earlier when we were talking, you said that, I think it was Max that said you welcome the public to come and to participate. Well, I don't always feel like, how are we supposed to participate? Because I don't really understand how that's works. Because I used to ask questions during the meeting, and then I was asked to wait to the end of the meeting, but then so I'm trying to kind of figure out how that would work best for everyone, because I don't want to cause trouble, and I don't have any questions today, so
Okay.
I can take up.
Except this question. Except this question. And
Yeah, so aside from that, so I just like to understand better how the public should be expected to participate.
I mean, I think coming and paying attention and seeing what we're doing, and then raising any questions they have or issues to us. I'll tell you, nobody ever reaches out to me about any issues whatsoever. About, hey, is the commission doing this? Is the commission doing that? You know, what's going on with this? I mean, it happens, but it's very rare. So I think coming and being engaged in the process, and I don't, your question kind of suggests to me that we should just open it up to any and everybody about every single issue.
No.
I don't think the meeting could be effectively
Right,
run that
right,
way.
no. What I would suggest, Beth, is we do want questions at the end. we can't go through each item and field questions at that point. But if you could clue us toward the end of the meeting, I got a question, that's perfect. And we will make sure and pay attention so that if you do have a question, we can do it then.
Maybe
Does
when-
that work for you?
Maybe when you ask for other business or,
Fine that you should do that, Max, it's just that I really don't understand, I mean, I did not understand how we were supposed to participate.
Right.
But I don't like to get up and just, do this.
Dance on the table and say, I have a question? Come on, Beth, get with the program here.
I think participate by being involved in the process and coming and paying attention to what we're doing or watching online.
I think,
Meetings, not just seeing one snippet in the abstract of the newspaper
Right,
article
right.
and then extrapolating from that. Oh, they're doing this, or they're doing that, or they're not doing this, or.
Yeah, well, I don't do that.
Well, no, I know you don't do
I
that. But
think-
I was addressing other, some people do, right? They don't come to the meetings and. You
I
come
think
to the
maybe-
meetings, You see what we do.
yeah, that's right.
But the public is, it kind of gets to, I think my point really gets to a larger issue. The public's invited to all of our meetings to see
Right,
this process
right.
in person. It's an open and transparent process.
But as far as participation goes, I think a better word would be engagement, because there's 3 commissioners, there's a staff. I don't know how you can participate in what we're doing in an active way. So
So it's like this.
engagement is-
The legislature meets in session, the public doesn't get to come.
Okay,
and bring
yeah,
up issues,
that's true.
But they do
They
bring up
can
the issues to their
connect,
representatives.
yeah.
Or to,
Yeah,
of either party.
Right.
That's the process, right?
Yeah. yeah. And testifying committee and so forth.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that's right, but when they go to a committee to testify, they're required to sign in that they're going to testify.
yeah,
But I'm not so sure that, we could say, on the other business, we could add public questions, comments, and as a reminder for you to ask if there's any comments.
yeah,
I don't remember a time that we've had people come to our meeting.
yes, right,
That we haven't, who want to address another issue, that we haven't entertained.
right.
I don't
Yeah.
recall that
Yeah, I
happening.
would agree.
Do you?
No, we don't shut people out.
Yeah.
No, it's just that sometimes I feel awkward
Okay.
having to, bring it up, so.
We appreciate that, and we will make sure and give you an opportunity whenever you think there's a question that needs to be asked.
And most of the questions I have that I reach out to him.
And that's usually the best way to do it.
I mean, frankly, she knows more about the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
That's who we talk to.
All of our stuff goes straight through her. Thank you, Beth. All right, well, this meeting is now adjourned.
Officially.